Guys, it's Lauren. Today I am coming to you with a foundation review, and the foundation in review is Becca's Aqua Luminous Perfecting Foundation. So I want to give you first up a rundown on how I want to review foundations moving forward. So from now on, I want to test out a foundation for at least 1 to 2 weeks. I think I gave this foundation about 3 weeks worth of testing. That way I can really get a feel for its longevity, environmental factors, application, brushes, and primers. So I'm gonna run through all of that with you in this video. But first up, I'm gonna give you a little bit of product information. First up, this is a $44 foundation. It's 1 ounce and it only has about 12 or so shades in the family of shade range that they sell, so not very many. Here's a little blurb. What it is: a flexible liquid foundation made from pigments that blur and perfect to reflect your perfect skin tone for light, buildable coverage and a radiant finish. Smooth on foundation coverage that feels ultra light and buildable while it evens and perfects your complexion. Every weightless drop of fluid imparts subtle luminosity that blurs imperfections and leaves a soft, focused glow. Let's move on to packaging. This comes in a very hefty glass frosted container, and it has a dropper style that upon twisting, it sucks in the product into the pipette. Now, it's very beautiful looking, but actually extremely impractical. From using about a dozen times already, has created quite the mess around the rim that is really hard to keep up with. Also, with how the pipette works, it doesn't soak up enough product to use for your entire face. So you have to continuously put it in and pull it out, and so on and so forth. It takes me about at least 4 pipettefuls to do my whole face. So not enough product is soaked up by the pipette. Also, this is rather heavy, like I said, so it is not going to be particularly good with travel. And reviews that I read of this, and from my own experience already with it getting super dirty around the rim, I could see this potentially exploding and leaking in bags. There was lots of reviews that showed photos of this pretty much leaking all over someone's travel content. So that is to note. Let's move on to coverage. Now, it states that it is a light to buildable foundation coverage, and I agree that it is a nice, light, very fresh, natural looking foundation, but I do not agree on the buildable part. In fact, I didn't really see any increase in coverage with going in multiple layers. It just sort of stayed the same. With it being a lightweight, I'd say it's like a more hardy skin tint. So hyperpigmentation, redness, just any sort of skin texture is going to show through and potentially be amplified by its luminosity. It does look really, really lovely on the skin, very skin-like, my skin, but better. But moving into length of wear, that doesn't last for very long. I'd say this foundation looks really lovely on the skin for about 2 hours. At that point, it starts to break down and separate. It really rubbed away around here, and then it began to lift off the skin on my cheeks, on my forehead, and then wore away completely along here. So it is not a particularly long-lasting foundation. I'd say overall it lasted for about 4 to 6 hours, with the first like immediate after application to 2 to potentially 4 hours of wear looking great, and then it just really starts to break down on the skin. Also, I found this to be a actually relatively difficult foundation to work with. You really have to work it into the skin or else it's going to sit on top. I I tried it with several different application methods. So I tested it with a buffing brush, a stippling brush, an artiste brush, and a beauty sponge. Since this is a serum-based foundation, you don't want to use a beauty sponge for it because that is going to soak up the majority of the product and not actually get it onto your face. I found that using an artiste brush or a stippling brush for application to be the best, and then going in with a 90% dry beauty sponge and taking the flat end and just stamping it onto the face to get it to smooth out any of the sort of lines that were created by the buffing tools. Also, I found that the best way to get it onto my skin was to take the pipette and just squirt it directly onto my face. If I squirted it onto the back of my hand and then picked up, too much of the serum started to absorb onto my hand, and then it just sort of became like a waste of product. I also found that it really took quite a lot of pressing into the face to get it to not just sit on top. So if I wasn't using the beauty sponge, also just using my hands and going in a pressing motion helped get it in. Also, it really needed to be set with powder immediately, or else it would settle into my forehead lines, which I have aplenty. And instead of just dusting it on the face, I found that very intentionally placing a small amount of powder across the face like this really helped set it. If I dusted it, that moved the foundation. This foundation moves incredibly easily with brushes and hands and anything like that. So very intentionally placing the product of any type was very necessary, or else it would move around. In terms of primers, I found that pore filling style primers to be the best to apply this on top of, because it is so luminous and that serum sort of style. It can really sink into the skin and therefore really show off your pores. And having something that filled in my pores and mattified beforehand really helped with longevity and the look of it. If I used any hydrating primers or anything that had a bit of a glow to it, it became too greasy too quickly, and it actually became too much luminosity. This is such a illuminating foundation that having anything glowy underneath can really take you from that nice glow into a little bit of greasy, which, you know, we don't want that. So let's move on to the pros and cons list. Starting with the positive, the pros. It does indeed have a beautiful, luminous, silky skin-like finish. It's also relatively lightweight feeling on the face. Unfortunately, the cons outweigh the pros with this foundation. It breaks down and wears away pretty fast. I found that it settled into my fine lines, and I found that after about 2 hours, maybe 4, it started to get extremely oily, especially in the T-zone. And with it not being a particularly long wearing foundation, it requires a lot of effort. Also, I thought it was important to bring up my skin type. I have combo to dry skin, and I occasionally get an oily T-zone. So I should have been the demographic that would work for this foundation based on what they wrote. But I think you'd have to have extremely dry skin with minimal texture and minimal redness, who wants a very lightweight, doesn't care about it lasting very long foundation, then this would be for you. If you need something to last you all day, have oily, combo oily skin, you are probably not gonna like this. All right, that wraps up my Becca Aqua Luminous Perfecting Foundation review. If you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like this video, I really hope you subscribe so we can do this again real soon. All right, have a great day. Bye.